Hey, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me once again. Liquorhound with you as usual. And today we're going to be doing a gin video along with some of the newer bottles that I've acquired. A few of them are very special. So let's go ahead and get started on the gins. As you can see, my collection is very limited, 9 bottles. The main reason for that was because up until recently I really only stocked my bar with about 5 of them. The U.S. market has been predominantly dominated by London dry gins ever since Prohibition ended, and so I always found that if you had a good staple London dry, you had your gin and tonics covered. Your traditional gin cocktails, you could make do with a London dry, but we just didn't have the originals, the Old Toms or the Dutch Genever style gins available. Like I said, that wasn't until recently. And thankfully, people have actually decided that, hey, what's wrong with, giving gin a little bit of mouthfeel or giving gin a little bit of a unique flavor. And that has really caught on. A little backstory on gins. 1800s, Old Tom, like I said, Dutch Genever, that was the style everybody was going with. That's where the original Martinez cocktail and the Tuxedo cocktails had come along. And of course the Martinez being known sometimes as the original martini. And that was created with an Old Tom style gin like we see back here in the back. Unfortunately, about 1836, 1837, column stills come in and you're able to produce a lot more London dry style than you are, your traditional pot stills that are taking 14 hours for a pass. You can get this column still pushing it out, at a third of the time. So that's what they did. And I guess right after Prohibition ended, the whole rage then was London dries. So the Old Toms were looked at as old hat, and it went away. Like I said, thankfully now we have Prohibition cocktail lounges coming in, and they're recreating the original cocktails and showing everybody that hey, the originals are sometimes better than what we had up until now. And of course, like I said, Old Toms had a huge role in that, and we're making great stuff now. So let's go ahead and get started. Bombay Sapphire right here. We're looking at a triple distilled London dry gin. It's actually very good. The thing I like about that one is it's very light, very floral, and the reason for that is the type of still that it's created in. It's created in a Carter head still, and Carter head is a still that uses a wire mesh basket to contain the botanicals, and the distillation vapors actually pass through that basket, and that's how the flavors get imparted into the spirit. It's not as alcoholic on the nose, like the alcohol, the high ethanols like you get in a column still. You still retain a little bit more mouthfeel than a column still gives you. But Carter heads are very light, very floral distillations. Next we have Hendrick's Gin. Hendrick's Gin out of Scotland. The big thing on Hendrick's was in 2003, the Wall Street Journal named it the best gin in the world. That may have been because everybody was totally bored with these London dries. Hendrick's brought in this, I think it's like a Bulgarian rose and a cucumber essence to the gin, and it makes it totally unique. It doesn't make to me for the best gin and tonics or cocktail mixer because of that. But if you get bored with your typical London dries and you want something a little different, a little new, Hendrick's is good. Next we have Blue Coat. Blue Coat is an American gin, and it actually won a double gold, as it states right there on the label, in 2009 at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. To me it's good, but I have this thing where I don't like orange liqueur flavored anything. That's how come I always had a problem back in my rum video with Pirate, the new Pirate XO. I don't like that rum for that simple fact. But this one has that essence to it. Now I'm sure it's not artificial orange, but I get that feeling, that's that taste. That's my own personal opinion. You may find it totally different. But to me, unless the cocktail is calling for, specifically like an orange liqueur or an orange flavor in it, then I would probably steer clear of using Blue Coat for that simple fact. It is very dominating of that spirit. Next we have Tanqueray. Tanqueray, of course, been around forever. That is the staple. In the middle there we have Rangpur, basically just your lime flavored Tanqueray. But Tanqueray 10, now that is a special London dry. That is my favorite of all time for a gin and tonic. It's full of citrus and orange, and you cannot beat that one. That is, like I said, fantastic. So smooth, so wonderful. Next, let's go ahead and move back to the older styles, the Hayman Old Time and the Ransom and Smalls there. Hayman's is actually created by Christopher Hayman, who is the grandson of the man that created Beefeater's Gin. And Christopher actually ran Beefeater's for like 15 years, and then he started this venture here once the, like I said, Old Times were coming back in style. And it was actually one of the first Old Times to hit the market. To me, it is a London Dry Gin with simple syrup. That is the best way I can describe it to you. Has the typical flavors of any London Dry, just sweet. Next we have Smalls Gin. Looks like a London Dry, definitely not a London Dry as far as the flavor. The flavor on the Smalls is predominantly cardamom and raspberries. Now, unless you know raspberries are in it, it's kind of hard to pick out that flavor. But once you hear that's what's in it, you're like, wow, that exactly is what it is. And I have spoken with the distiller, and he has told me that the raspberries are probably that's the biggest ingredient that he uses in that gin. And you can definitely tell it when you taste it, because to me, when I mix this with a little bit of either a raspberry liqueur, or let's say if you're making old fashioned using Luxardo cherries, if you muddle a Luxardo cherry with this gin in an old fashioned cocktail, fantastic. That's probably my favorite old fashioned, next to using the Ransom Gin right here. And this is Ransom Old Time Gin. As you can tell, the color, again, I think I've covered this one before, but it's actually aged between right at 6, it says 3 to 6 months, but the distiller had mentioned that he actually likes to bottle it at around 6 to 7 months old. You get his colors because he uses Pinot Noir barrels and his aging process. And the whole reason for that was because they knew that back in the 1800s, when the gin was being created over in England or anywhere over in Europe, and it finally makes its way on slow boat to the U.S., it was sitting in barrels between 3 to 6 months by the time it made it to the Midwest sometimes. So that's what he did. And there's no sugar added to this one, unlike Hayman's, which does add sugar. Nothing added to that one. And that is just naturally sweetened by the sugars of the wood. It is unbelievable stuff. You make a cocktail with that one, it will smoke any other gin on the market. With the exception of possibly, I'm not going to recommend that one so much for a gin and tonic, but I'm talking actual gin cocktails. Fantastic stuff. So that's about it for my gins. Now let's go ahead and get started on the new bottles. And starting right here with El Viejo Luis. It's basically just a reposado tequila, aged about 2 months. But at a price point of about $15. Great stuff. Next we have, this is Milagro, of course, a select barrel reserve. Each bottle gets individually numbered, and it actually won a few awards. I think it's scored a 90/95 through the Wine Enthusiast magazine. It's aged 3 years, triple distilled. Very, very good stuff. Next we have Esperanto Selección Anejo. What makes this one so special is that it won Spirit of the Year in 2007 by the International Spirits and Wine Competition. It's very rare. You won't see this one on too many shelves because it's so fragile. If you can hear, let's see here. I'm actually scared to hit that thing too much. Very, very thin glass. But it has a beautiful blue agave blown into the middle there. Like I said, you won't find too many shippers that'll actually ship that because of that reason. But it's supposed to be really, really tasty. Next, we have Parker's Heritage. This is their 4th edition. It's a wheated bourbon mash bill that is 10 years old. This one's bottled at 124.2, but I've actually seen bottles being barreled at barrels being bottled at like 131 proof. So I think it just depends on which bottle you're finding. What makes this one so unique is that it's a limited edition where they use this Kentucky winter wheat in the recipe. Very, very good. You will not believe the proof when you taste it, because it does not taste like 120 plus proof bourbon. Super smooth. and priced at only $80, this stuff is going to fly off the shelf. The biggest problem with somebody acquiring this bottle is that there was only 52 barrels poured to bottle. So you're looking at about 4,800 bottles for the world. And at only $80 for this fantastic stuff, it's going to, like I said, it's going to go really quick. Of course, the first through the third editions, you were looking at bottles that were selling between $125 and $225. So for this one to be only $80, like I said, that's a bargain. Next, we have a Jim Beam Yellow Rose decanter. Very, very beautiful bottle. This was actually created and bottled in 1978. And like I said, it's 135 months old, which comes out to 11 years and 2 months. Bottled at 80 proof. Very similar. It's actually the oldest Jim Beam release. Now, they made one, I think, for every state. But like I said, at 11 years and 2 months old, you're not going to find an older Jim Beam. Very, very oaky, full of vanilla, very dark bourbon, similar to like a Booker or something like that, but not, of course, not with the high alcohol content. Next, let's see, let's go ahead and smooth this one. Ron Centenario 20-year-old. What makes this one so special, of course, as you can see right there, leather bound, beautiful bottle. Actually tied mine in. It doesn't come like this, it actually comes loose, but if you just lace it through, keep the topper right there. Great rum. Coming out of Costa Rica. It was actually created to celebrate like the distiller's 20 years of making fine rums, and so he made this stuff, and it is absolutely incredible. For a 20-year-old, it tastes more like it has like a depth and character of more like a 30-year-old rum. Of course, at a price point of only like $27 to $30, you're nowhere near 30-year-old rum price. You're looking at paying between $200 and $400 for something like that. But like I said, the only thing I would say about this one slightly bad would be the finish. The finish it's just a medium finish, not as long as I would like, because the flavors are so interesting and so full in the mouth. You just want it to last forever. But it doesn't, but that's okay, because it is in the same league, and it's a little bit sweet. It's in the same league of like the Ranza Capa 23 or the Zaya Diplomatico, those type of little, sugary rums. But this one's not as sweet, but a little more depth than some of those. Next, we have Seven Tiki, and what makes that one special, it's just basically coming out of Fiji. It's full of vanilla, a spiced rum, and at only 70 proof, you will fly through this bottle. If you enjoy rum and cokes, or vanilla coke, for example, you're going to kill this bottle. I've served it at several little get-togethers, and every time I go through at least a bottle. Let's see. Next, we have Mackinlay's Rare and Old Highland Malt Whiskey, also known as the Shakleton Whisky. What makes this one so special is that it is a recreation of a whiskey that was found in the Antarctic, from a 1907 expedition that Ernest Shackelford had. Shackleton was his name. Jeez, had made from 1907 to 1909. He and his group tried to be the first to make it to the South Pole. Unfortunately, it was cut short, just like 100 miles. He missed it by because of real bad weather was coming in, and the ocean was actually freezing up. So rather than get stranded there and possibly die, they went ahead and beat a hasty retreat. And this stuff was actually put underneath the hut. So there's like this beautiful hut that's there, and it has all their supplies still in it to this day. It looks like it was just lived in yesterday when you look at pictures. But what ended up happening was they left, and that hut just sat there abandoned forever. And finally, I think it's like the New Zealand Heritage Trust people went in there with archaeologists and started, preservation techniques on everything. And they actually, when they dug underneath the hut, they found a few cases of spirits, two of which were this Mackinlay's Rare and Old Highland Malt Whiskey, and I think a couple were this brandy, apple brandy. But when White and McKay, specifically Richard Patterson of White and McKay, heard about this, They own the Mackinlay name. They actually bought that, I think, in 1996. And so they immediately, VJ Malia, which is the owner of White & McKay, huge, billionaire type person, flew his private jet over there. He was able to acquire 3 bottles of it, had to personally fly them back to the labs where they did the test on it. They were actually able to figure out, that it was aged in American white oak barrels that were sherry casks, and that it was using peat from the Orkney Islands, and using the malt was coming from Glenmore. And so anyway, they actually recreated it as close to the original as they could. And from what I understand from people that have tasted the original, they say that it is spot on, that it is perfect. The most accurate recreation that could have been done is done. It's a very limited edition. Like I said, it's not available in the U.S. It probably will not be available in the U.S. because it is, like I said, so few bottles, and they bottle them at 70 CLs, so they're not going to make 750s and bring them over here just for us. So if you can, order them online, get you a couple. It is fantastic whiskey. Even at the 150 conversion price, it is well worth it. And that's what I would have to say about that one. Beautiful presentation. Next, let's go ahead and go skip that one. Let's go right here. Mount Gay Tricentennial. Very rare bottle. Rum collectors know it well. What makes this one so special is that it was created in 2003 to celebrate the 300th anniversary of distilling fine rums in Barbados. You can see it's beautiful, beautiful bottle, beautiful box. I haven't opened it yet. It's like I said, it's very tough to find one of these. I would almost guess that it would be impossible to find one on a store shelf. But if you can find a fellow collector or somebody that's willing to part with it, highly recommend you do so. If you're a collector out there, this is one that you definitely need to add. I, like I said, was fortunate enough to have a friend that had one and was willing to part, and so I added it to my collection. Next, we have this one. This is not Patron, what am I saying? This is Porfidio, Ponciano Porfidio's Barrique. And beautiful, beautiful bottle. It's a 1 liter bottle of anejo tequila. It was actually created around 1990-95 is when it was actually released. And the majority of these bottles, there was only 2,000 created, and the majority of them actually went to Japan. The reason for that was because Japan was paying, upwards of $2,000 a bottle for this stuff. And so that's where they sent the majority, and the remaining bottles came to the U.S. and were retailing around $500 to $600. Sounds like an awful lot. It is an awful lot, but collectors bought them up. Fortunately for me, I was actually able to find this one on a store shelf. So that just goes to show that, there's still plenty of good, great finds out there sitting on these dusty shelves. Anyway, thank you again for joining me. Thank you for taking a look at my collection once again. Like I said, everybody take care, and I hope to be shooting my next video fairly soon. So y'all enjoy. Bye-bye.